Well, I really like psychology and understanding people. And our role at Vision One is really helping businesses make better decisions, helping them grow. And that's at the heart of everything we do. But I guess my real interest and purpose in life has always been to discover things. When I was a young kid, I really enjoyed treasure hunting with my metal detector or going fossil hunting. And I've always had the mantra to and aim to discover something. So that's what really motivates me about brands, is to discover new insights. In a big business, everyone feels like they're part of a big machine and part of a process. And what I really got from it is understanding about planning and preparing, strategizing and setting goals. Those weren't things that were normal or natural to me. And those are things that I've taken away and really tried to apply to my own business. The fact that I'm here 25 years later and adopting what I call big company thinking has really been part of the success of Vision One and a secret to its longevity. Yeah, I really enjoyed corporate life, especially in the first years. And when I first started, I went to a company called Royal Sun Alliance, and that was a fabulous place to work. I can remember they had a sports club and everything, with rugby, tennis courts. I spent more time there than anywhere else, but that was one of the perks of a big business. And a three-course lunch started at 7p. So it was an incredible start to life. And the thing that I really appreciated was the fact that they spent money and invested in training for all their staff, which helped me in my transition from my education through to my working career. The thing about when I started up in business, I was all on my own, and having come out of an in-marketing environment, which tends to be some of the most liveliest places within a business, I did miss the energy and excitement and the buzz that was there. And when you're working on your own in a little office, it felt a million miles from that. But as soon as I got a client and I had real work in front of me, I felt differently. And to be honest, I don't think ever since then I've looked back since that very first project. From my early years, I really knew what I wanted to do, and that was to set up my own business. It was in my blood. There were several reasons for that. My dad was part of a family-run business called Lewis Coates and Lucas, a London-based law firm. And he took me up there at a tender age, probably around 7, and he showed me his boardroom. And he revealed that the boardroom table actually turned into a dual-purpose snooker table. And so we spent a couple of hours playing snooker, and I thought, oh, this is the life for me. And that was the start of it. And I thought, realizing, oh, when you're your own boss, you can have the perks of things like that. Unfortunately, my dad's business did go down due to Company House moving down to Cardiff, and it made it challenging. And that's always also fueled me to set up my business and to try and make a success of it. The hardest thing back then, things have changed, is that I was starting a business with no background in running a business. And so it was all learning on the job. If I had the opportunity to do things again, I probably would have gone on something like LinkedIn Learning and used YouTube to really develop my understanding of how to run a business, what I need to do. So it probably the education and knowledge and understanding. But the good thing is you have less risks when you start out. So you can afford to make mistakes. You know, it's not like you're going to be letting anyone down other than yourself. So I quite like that, not having that responsibility to answer to others. I believe brands make life much more interesting and enjoyable. You know, sometimes lie awake at night and think what it'd be like in a world without brands. Just imagine, you know, all the cars we drove were the same or the same color. Just imagine all food choices that we buy from the supermarket tasted the same. And where would the innovation be? Life would just be so boring without brands. It would just, in my mind, turn the world grey. So brands are something more than just that, though. You know, it's a bit like a placebo effect. If you believe something's going to help you, make you feel better, taste better, ultimately it will. And if we have those beliefs and ideas in our minds, all it does is improve our enjoyment and experience of life. Successful brands are brands that have survived a long period of time and stood the test of time. Some might think successful brands in terms of money. I'm not sure I feel like that. I feel that brands will come and go, and it's something that's really difficult to avoid. And the real successful ones are the ones who've developed the secret and the knowledge to actually stay in tune with customers, follow customer trends, and develop and build their brand over time. Those are the ones that are really successful and should be called out. And examples would be Coca-Cola, Google, Chanel, Netflix, M&S, Co-op, Virgin, BBC, Lego, IKEA, there's lots of really strong brands, and those are the ones that I admire and have got it right. Brands are in people's minds. They don't really physically exist. You might see a logo, but brands is how we think about them and feel about them in our minds. So the things that really drive it, and this is really interesting from the work we've done, there are 6 key areas. The first is what I call social fitness, and that is basically how the public at large are thought to think and feel. For example, is the brand seen as popular? Is it seen as appealing, or is it seen as fashionable? Those ideas, if we think that, really influence our decision making, and that favorability will encourage us to choose a brand over another. Another one is user image, how you see the users, who actually buys this particular product or service. That has a phenomenally strong impact on our decision making. We like to align with people who we think are like us or who we aspire to be. And user image is really underplayed by most marketers. I know most marketers will focus on target market, but they don't actually look to see what does the public actually think of these brands. So that's a really important one. An emerging real important element to successful brands in recent years is what I call altruism. It's the idea of doing something good. And that brands that actually are doing something good in the mind of the customer, charities have always been doing that, but brands are doing that now more and more as they've caught on to this idea that it's really good to be seen to be doing something good. And people value that. They want to feel that they're buying into a brand that's actually doing something good for the world or for a particular segment. Or yes, I am a fan from a business perspective. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I prefer to be private in the way that I am, but essentially from a business perspective, it is really important today. One of the things that is most important for small business to take note of is the power of video. And this is where the likes of YouTube come in. Our latest research really shows that brand momentum is driven largely by emotion. And the most successful advertising on television is actually emotional advertising. It's what makes people care. And what we're trying to do with, and should be trying to do with brands, is to make people care about your brand. And you do that through emotion. And that's why doing something good is one of those elements of creating that care and emotion with the brand. TikTok is another one doing well in recent years. Again, that's a video format. People enjoy video. It's a lot easier to absorb and more entertaining. I generally find that in a lot of the communications research we do, people don't like reading words these days. I don't know whether we're time poor, but we just like really short, punchy statements. One of the challenges for small businesses from the social media point of view is initially when they start out, they're going to have very few followers. So spending a great deal of time may feel a bit pointless. Unfortunately, it does take a while to build up your following. So you do have to persevere. So, just make sure that your social media activity, whilst cheap to actually deliver, is actually performing for you, and that you're spending the relevant time and investment on it. But there's so many different types of social media and also different ways of connecting with people electronically and digitally. It's just one of the ways that you can help communicate and build your brand. Yes, Brand Vision started about 7-8 years ago. We were looking to develop and build a best-in-class brand tracking program, essentially a tool to help understand how the public or prospective buyers in business think about a brand and their competitors. It's really designed to help understand where your brand sits in the mind of the customer, and also compare and contrast with your competitors. And by understanding that, it's really to inform your marketing and business strategies. So brand vision was really designed to help provide those insights. And I won't go into detail today, but essentially there are 8 key metrics that we measure and monitor in the form of brand equity. So things like brand awareness, brand emotion, consideration, brand loyalty, the Net Promoter Score. Those are just some of the factors that we look at. Yes, a lot of the world has turned digital, and because of that, people are making decisions a lot quicker and in a short time frame. The old models assume that people went through a process of what we call the AIDA, which is building from, you build awareness first, and then you generate interest, desire, and action. What the digital world has done is actually accelerate that process. And actually, it can all happen in the same moment. So, for example, when you're shopping online, you may find and discover something very quickly and go through to purchase. So that process can be really curtailed. And the other thing is that the tools and the way that it works, the stats I've seen suggest that most people will, if they're not familiar with a brand, will do some research and we'll look at customer reviews. And that's why customer reviews are so important, is that people are trying to make a quick decision, and that speed means that they need some way of making that decision. And normally it's about either I know something about it, or I'll look at what somebody else thinks about it to make that decision. Momentum's really born out of some of the work that was done by Sir Isaac Newton. He developed an equation for momentum. This is physical momentum. So this is objects moving. And the equation is momentum is mass times velocity. So mass is the size of the object, and velocity is the speed and direction of the object. So the way to think about it is the momentum of a car, for example, is how big is that car and how fast is it traveling. And effectively, it gives you momentum as an idea of how much force or how much energy is in that vehicle as it's moving. And as you can imagine, the bigger and faster something is moving, the more impact it has on the world around it. So the idea of momentum is really about growing and building your mass and continuing that effect. And what's really interesting in the mind, if you can, once you've got that established, it stays with people for quite a long time. So if you can build that idea of momentum into a brand, you're likely to keep going and growing for years to come. What we see is in the research that brands will continue for at least a few years after any kind of activity to show signs of growing. I've always had a soft spot for Virgin, and the fact that you've got a brand there with Richard Branson being able to sell records and then turn that into flights or media is just an incredible feat, and someone who really appreciates and understands brands. And for me, Richard, probably one of my icons in terms of business. There are lots of great business people out there, but those that actually manage to last a long time, as I indicated earlier, really is important and what I define as success. There is enough support that's available online if that's information you need. What businesses really need is expert support from consultants who know their stuff. The problem is there's so many ideas out there. It's difficult knowing which one should you do, and often they will conflict. So the reason for that is every business is different and has a different problem and issue. And really you need to start with that issue in order to work out, how do I move on, or how do I address that particular problem? Because different things work in different situations. So understanding your business is really at the heart of it. And then finding someone who can come up with the right solution for you. It may be readily available online, but if not, you need to speak to a consultant. In terms of money and support from the government, there's always more that could be done. It is really difficult to grow if you don't have money. to invest, whether that's in your products or services or whether in marketing. But anything, you could always have more, I guess, at the end of the day. Without trying to sound too repetitive, the fact that I'm here 25 years later is a dream for me. Some stats I was reading for an article I was writing a while ago was suggesting that almost half of businesses don't last more than 5 years. And so, the fact that I got past that and actually going 25 years is what I set out to achieve. And that's great. But recently we won 3 awards for Best Market Research Agency by the Drum. And so I'm really proud of that, not just winning it once, but winning it 3 times, which my understanding, if it's correct, is that no other research agency has done before us. So really proud of that. The most important thing for me is putting the customer at the heart of your business, really understanding who your customer is and making sure you're delivering what they want. If you get that, that's half the secret to success in my mind. So that's number 1. Number 2 is sound and solid financial management. No business really can survive for long if it isn't making money. And you really need to examine how your business is working and where it's generating that money. Understanding your competitors is really important. One of the things that most brands try and do is actually differentiate. And the way to differentiate is to be the only or the only one. So essentially try and not copy others, but find something unique that no other company rep can do. Essentially, by being the only company that does something, whatever it is, you've removed all your competitors. So that would be my key tip at the end of the day. If you need another idea, another tip is really your aim is to make people care about you. And to do that, you need to communicate and you need to care about them. So really focus on emotion and really focus on getting them to care about you. Otherwise, you're just one of 4 million brands out there in the UK who are small businesses. I did a search on the internet when I started out writing the book to see how many books on momentum in the way that I'm talking to and referring to, which is about the measurement of the brand velocity score and the brand size and that momentum equation. No one has ever written about it, not in a book form that I can see. When we did some research amongst business owners, CEOs of medium and large size businesses, the number 1 goal for the vast majority of them was growth. So on one hand, what we were seeing is everyone wanted growth, and actually they were all interested in momentum. 90% were interested in momentum. However, no one really knew and understands how to create momentum. And that was one of the reasons for the book as well. So it's really those 2 points that have driven my desire to write the book. The key benefits and why it will help businesses is that, firstly, it explains the key drivers of momentum and what things to look at. And if you know those 6 things, that can really help you. 6 or 7 years ago, one of our clients came up to me and said, "Tony, like your brand vision, love the metrics, but which one's the most important?" And that question has stuck with me for those 7 years, really, since he's asked that. And what momentum brings is clarity into what really matters. If you can understand growth, you can promote that idea of growth. The evidence is there to say, well, you're going to achieve growth. So what we're just trying to do through the book is to help clients understand the way to grow. I'm really lucky. I live in the South Lakes, just south of Lake Windermere, and we're in a beautiful countryside. And the way I unwind is to go for a stroll with my wife virtually every evening after work or in the afternoon whenever I can. Overall, I'm really encouraged by some of the things happening. In truth, we're having a record year at Vision One, which is fantastic. People and businesses have latched on to the idea that they need proper insights to drive their business forward. So from the world that and the perspective that I have, I think the outlook's really good. Obviously, we're coming into change. We've had a phenomenal amount of change in the last 5 years or so, not just COVID or high inflation, political change. I don't know how many prime ministers we've had, but there's also conflict in Europe. We've dealt with quite a lot. So I'm optimistic we're going to go from it's a bit of a bust period to a boom. So I'm going to stay positive and say we're heading for a boom in the next 5 years. The three takeaway points is to develop a growth mindset, and it's about keeping your brand moving. A lot of organizations and brand specialists will often tell you to set up a brand proposition, a brand positioning statement, or a brand mission. It's really important that you evolve with time, and therefore nothing should really be written in stone. I like the idea that brands have got wings or wheels or have some way of moving. It's really important that you don't see it as just very stationary. So the important thing there is evolve and develop and grow, and actually don't stay the same. If you stay the same, all people will think is that you're not changing, you're not growing, and you're not successful. So keep changing, keep growing.